Good afternoon. Is there anybody who doesn't speak Dutch in the room? Otherwise, we continue. Okay, no problem. Then we do it in English. Thank you for joining. Regulations. I'm sure everybody enjoys that there are so many new EU regulations coming up all the time. I'm sure you all have the same feeling about it, another one. But on the other hand, it also brings opportunities. Of course, apart from the EU regulations, and there are indeed a lot of them, they all have their particular requirements. The good thing is they also have common requirements. So that's also a way of looking at regulations. Of course, they have an impact on either your strategy for security or your network strategy. Another good thing is that you have frameworks to cover all those needs for the EU regulations. Of course, you will not cover everything with technical organizational things. You also have to keep an eye on everything all together. So you have to kind of get a pragmatic approach towards them. And then as we are reaching NIS2 compliance very soon, I wanted to give a few words or add a few words about NIS2 also as part of this presentation. So there's just a few of them here, regulations. I won't bother with going through all of them, but you are getting the slide, so it's kind of handy for each of these EU regulations that you can go and look up what the specifications are in terms of what's the objective, what is compliant, who needs to be compliant, some sub-criteria. Of course, all EU regulations all have in common that you get fined if you don't respect the rules, and also the effective date. So that's just something that might come up handy afterwards, but of course it's not something that we will go through now. What I would like to discuss is how cybersecurity is strongly tightened to most of those regulations, some more than others, because some of them are actually about improving your all-over security posture. Others are data related, but that data needs to be protected, so they are in that way indirectly affecting the regulation or the cybersecurity part. Well, I don't know if there are people here in the room that need to be NIS compliant. I would say quite a few. Yep. So there's quite a lot of companies that fall within a sector that is making it necessary for you to comply with NIS2. On the other hand, what we are all need to be compliant with is the GDPR. It's also there, it has been there for a while. But that's something that needs to be respected. So that means that if you need to comply with one or more of these regulations, well, it's not optional. You have to comply. But that also gives you opportunities, because we are all IT-minded people here. If you need to go to your management to get budget, well, that's one of the tools you can use also, because if you want to raise the overall security posture, well, you need some budget for that. And raising your overall security posture also helps with getting compliant with these regulations. So hence why it's quite important that you see it from a cybersecurity point of view also. Then, regarding those requirements, you will see that they have overlaps. You might have NIS2, you might have AI, you might have GDPR, they all have overlaps. For instance, incident reporting. For GDPR, you need to report an incident or a data breach within 72 hours. For NIS2, it's within 24 hours, the early warning at least, but you see, you all need to report things. DORA, I don't know if there are financial institutions here or somebody who represents a financial institution. That's the Resilience Act. Okay. Anyway, you also have reporting obligations there. Risk management, you will see it in almost every regulation, that you need to have some kind of risk management. For NIS2, it's really important to have risk management. Another one is, and sometimes we are forgetting about that, and that is management responsibility. Senior management is responsible for being compliant with all of those regulations, but there are two in particular, and that is DORA and NIS2, that even puts your senior management accountable for being compliant. That means that they might get into trouble personally if they don't comply. So that's always a good way of getting extra budget if you need to go to your senior management, and you can point that out to them. They need to be aware of that, and that's actually something that is important. Supply chain, also very important. I think we all know the recent hacks in which the supply chain was the weakest link. So in that way, it's also getting a lot of attention, a lot of stress on it, that it needs to be covered. You need to have the right contracts, you need to have the right products, you need to test them, you need to upgrade them. So that's all very, very important within those EU regulations. So now that we have the overlaps, we see that it also has an impact on our strategy towards cybersecurity, towards networking. It's always a good way to see it as a holistic part. You have different parts, they're all connected to each other. Well, you have risk management, okay, you have supply chain. So they're always there, and so you can cover them as a whole. But you need to integrate that throughout the entire company. Whereas we used to tend to focus on IT, well, that's not an option anymore if you need to be NIS2 compliant, for instance. It's the entire company, so you need to take into account all layers. So from the technical people all the way up to higher management. You need to implement certain things as incident response or monitoring tools. You need to have the right procedures, the right policies. They're all important. It's not just important to have the document, the policy. You also need to implement them, make sure people are using them. For risk management, I strongly suggest that you build a robust risk management body in which you can see all the different risks. It doesn't need to be just on cybersecurity risks. It can also be on other risks, but it needs to be part of it. And awareness. People need to know what their responsibilities are. It's simple as that. If you don't train them, they don't know. If you don't test it, they will not see an incident or spot an incident as soon as there is one. So also important to train your people. Now, the good news is that you have certain frameworks that cover all those parts, cyber risk, incident response and all and that. So you have to choose one. That's always difficult to make a choice. But they are covering all three of them. I just took three, the main ones. You have ISO 27001 series. The NIST framework is also very popular and also very good. It focuses on those 5 pillars of them, where you have to identify, protect, respond, react, and what's the fifth one? Recover. That's the last one indeed, thank you. The good thing about NIST is that they are flexible. You can put it on, you can implement it in a small company, in a big company, it doesn't matter. Of course, incident response is quite important for them too. Another good feature is that you can put yourself or give yourself or target a certain maturity level. That means that you do not maybe want to be a level 3 security company, might be enough if you're on level 2. That is something you can, that is really good within NIST. ISO 27000, really popular because it's internationally known. It's also quite flexible. They focus very much on their plan, do, check, act cycle, which means that you need to be able to show that you are continuously improving your processes, which is obviously one of the key goals in security management and information security management. And you can get a certificate for it. That means that an accredited institution can come and do an audit and give you an ISO 27001 certificate. That also helps in showing that you maintain a good level of information security. Last but not least, that's the very own Belgian cybersecurity center, CYFUN, so the cyber fundamentals. They kind of went eclectic about it because they did a multi-standard approach. They took several different standards and they built up a base with very good implementations. What they have as a plus is that they propose concrete measures. That means that they are proposing what you need to implement, which is sometimes missing in other standards such as ISO 27000. They also offer some tools. For instance, you can check for yourself as a company, do we need to comply with NIS2 or not? That's one of their tools. Another one is that they also give the self-assessment tool. That means that they have a list of requirements. You can score yourself, see what you have implemented, and see whether or not you're already NIS2 compliant. Of course, the CCB CYFUN framework has been developed specifically for NIS2 compliance, but it can also be used for others. The main thing is that either one of those three frameworks you are using, it helps you building a very robust security strategy. And that is something that will last for the future also for new regulations that might come up along the way. Now, regarding NIS2, very handy. You can find some guidance on Safe on Web for NIS2 compliance. They offer some tooling, as I said, to check if you are affected. Important, if you need to comply, you need to register. You have time for that. Most companies until the 18th of March next year. There are some exceptions. They are already forcing us to start with incident reporting on critical incidents. That is as of the 18th, of course, of November, after the effective date of NIS2. Cybersecurity training, that means that you need to start looking at what kind of training do I need to present to our management. And also start by downloading the cybersecurity framework, see what kind of measures you need to implement, and start checking if you are already compliant or not. Last but not least, certification. We will be forced also to certify with some kind of framework. We have three options. You can do the Siphon certification, for which you still have enough time, it's no problem. You can also do it with an ISO 27001 certification. Remember that it's even if you are 27001 certified already, that on a certain scope, perhaps IT, that will change, because now it will be for your entire company and not just for the scope of IT. Third one is that you ask the CCB to come over and to inspect you. And then you just need to show that you are compliant with every requirement from the NIS2, but that's a possibility also. Of course, there's always a difference between the essential and the important entities. That's largely related to the size. And, well, there isn't that much difference. There are differences in terms of requirements, but it's good to always do the review internally. That's either with 27001 or with the Siphon. Another handy thing on the site of Safe on Web is their frequently asked questions. They published them because they noticed that quite a lot of companies had the same kind of questions. For instance, is it possible for a company to fall within different sectors? It is definitely possible that you have a company that's big enough and that falls into two sectors that force you to be compliant with NIS2. Then it's actually the larger one that prevails and will most probably put you in the essential entities. Other things, as what if an incident occurs in which personal data is also involved, well, then you need to report them to two instances. That means one to the CCB because of the incident, and the other one to the GBA then for the personal data breach. So that means that you need to report to two different channels. In the future, that might be optimized, but at this point, you need to do it 2 times. But very handy to go through the frequently asked questions. Yes?
Can you also answer the third?
Entities operating in several countries? Yes, of course. So the one that is in Belgium will usually need to be your headquarters. If you have headquarters anywhere else, they need to have presence in Belgium. So if you are not really a Belgian company, then, of course, it will be your external, or just say if it's in Germany, for instance, your headquarters, then it could also be, but it will be the German law that will prevail. No.
You need to register in each and
No. You just need to register where your headquarters are located. Yeah, because that's the one that you need to follow as a law for your company. Yeah.
Means that also incident reporting has to be done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like the reporting bureau, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. For us, it will be in the for the CCB that you need to report them. Yeah. Okay. Just as a quick reminder, those are all the sectors that need to comply with NIS2. The ones in black are the ones that were already for NIS1. Now you see a few more that's for the NIS2. If you are one of these companies that are active in those sectors, but I'm sure I saw a lot of hands raised already that the checks have been done, but it's always good to check with your legal department. Do you remember that the size of your company also counts, as well as the annual turnover? But yeah, quite a lot of industries need to comply with NIS2, so that's why it's so important. That's why it's getting so much focus also. If you need to comply, here's the list. I will not speak about all of them, but there are quite a few of them. You have policies for information security, supply chain risk security, as I said. You need to implement also some basic hybrid, hygiene for cyber, and that is, for instance, multi-factor authentication. We noticed the figures from the presentation we just had. We still allow a lot of logons to our networks with just user and password. That needs to change. You need to implement multi-factor authentication, of course, at least. Also, cryptography and encryption are getting a lot more attention, so you need to really pay attention to those things. What are we implementing? How are we doing it? Do we have policy on that? Because everything needs to be documented. If an order comes, you can always say, yes, we do that, but if he asks you, can you show me? You need to be able to show it also, of course. And then specifically for Belgium, you need to do risk analysis. That means that you need to have this body in which you can do your risk analysis. Also documented, of course. Your information security policy, we already had that one. But another one is your coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy. That means that you need to be transparent about vulnerabilities you are detecting, and also about how you will fix them, within how much time, who will do it. So those things need to be described. Maybe later on, down the road, they will also ask us to kind of interlink that information. Like we already see with CCB, they are already doing that. As a company, you can always register with the CCB, whether or not you need to be NIS2 compliant, to get at least their information on vulnerabilities. So that's quite handy also. You can also ask for a more elevated type of information that you will get, and then in that way you might be the first one to get news on new vulnerabilities, so you might patch faster, so you might get safe again faster also. And you need to demonstrate continual improvement. Again, if you look at the ISO 27001 with the Plan to Check Act cycle, that is definitely really good, or a good framework, because they have this focus on continual improvement. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you.